First, we go to our next speaker, Karin. Please come forward. She's from the Association of Nova Scotia Museums, and I'm really looking forward to her presentation as well.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I bring you greetings from Jabuktuk, Mi'kma'ki, which is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. You may know that as Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. So yes, I'm from the Association of Nova Scotia Museums. We're a really small nonprofit that likes to think and dream big. Our members are largely very small museums, community-operated organizations. They might only have 1, 2, 3 staff people and rely largely on volunteers to do their work. Many of them are only open seasonally as well. So we have some unique challenges with that. About 60 of our member museums participate in what we call our advisory service. So this is basically a museum co-op. And we all work together with them very hands-on with their collections. We offer database services and online sharing at novamuse.ca. So one of the special initiatives that we launched with this group was we said, okay, a lot of what we see in the collections and the framing of stories comes from a very white settler perspective. So let's really dig into that, and let's try and make sure that we are sharing information and that our documentation shares the perspectives from cultural groups from across the province. And 4 of what Nova Scotia refers to as the founding cultural groups are the Acadian, African Nova Scotian, Gaelic, and the Mi'kmaq communities. What we realized when we started this is we were getting way in over our heads. So, very obvious starting points. You guys are all going through the same things. What we recognize is that the majority of these museums were founded by descendants of these white settler communities, so that was their network. They didn't really have connections with other cultural groups. Because of the way the museums evolved, they hadn't really spent a lot of time engaging with these other cultural groups. And the documentation, of course, was from a very white settler perspective. So we identified some goals. We said, hey, we need to build connections. We need to work on this. We need to make some new friends is really what it came down to. We needed to make sure we were listening to what people were telling us when we went out, and then we needed to act on that to demonstrate that we were sincere in wanting to make these changes, that this was not part of any kind of government or social initiative or any, checking a box. We really want to do this work. And we wanted to make sure that these communities had access to items that came from their communities. We naively thought, okay, we'll come up with a digitization strategy and this is going to fix all the issues and we will go, skipping and singing, holding hands through fields together at the end. That did not happen. We also, on novamuse.ca, have a for teachers section, and so that's why this final point might seem a little out of place there. So what we did, we said, okay, we'll go out into communities. We are going to just talk to people. We're going to come up with a series of discussion questions, and then we'll reach out to broader community. We'll compile all of this data. We'll get input. We'll develop a strategy. We'll put the work into action. We'll find funding and resources, and this is going to be great. What really happened? We knew we needed a safe space. So the first step was obviously saying, nothing is being recorded here. Everyone is welcome. We're just having conversations. We took copious notes. We partnered with local community groups and experts and said, okay, let's really dig into the culture and history of your community. Let's have a discussion time. We had a few questions to guide that, and then we asked museums to bring along items from their collections that linked back into these communities to spark even more conversation. We also invited our counterpart, the Council of Nova Scotia Archives, to participate in these sessions so that as we put things into action, they're on board too. Again, what really happened? This was very unique. There were tears, there was anger, there was appreciation. It was an incredibly emotional experience. We had one session where we had the highest registration, which we said, we just want to know how much food to bring to feed you guys. And no one showed up. What ended up happening then, though, is we had a wonderful conversation about the lack of trust between this cultural group and the museum community, and why that was in place and what we needed to do to build that trust. We had really open and blunt conversations. We heard things like, we love museums. We heard people say, I don't see myself in your museum. The museum in my community doesn't tell my story. It doesn't speak for what I know about my culture and my community or my history. We were asked why we're talking about digitization when we don't know each other yet, and we need to just have conversations about connecting and understanding. And basically what happened is we opened a door that could not be closed, right? Once you hear this input, you cannot pretend that you didn't hear it. You can't pretend that you didn't see it. The key lessons that I think are really important for everybody in this room, one of our Mi'kmaq friends said, you need to be building bridges. And that lesson, I think, really has stuck with us through that. A lot of the cultural groups that we were meeting with are used to people coming because of checking boxes and certain priorities that either have come down institutionally or from funders. And they just want you to come in, sit down with them, have tea together and say, hi, I'm Karin. What's your name? Here's what I do. What do you do? Let's learn about each other. Rather than coming and saying, I have an idea for a project. I have this thing I would like to do. I have your stuff in my collection. Let's talk about that. We're getting way ahead of ourselves, and we need to really pull back and just make connections first. We heard from people saying, you're picking and choosing what you're sharing in museums, and that's not my culture, that's not my story. You shouldn't be picking and choosing. We want, with our voice, to tell our stories. And we want the whole story tell, because obviously cultures are complex, nuanced, and so the little highlights that museums are sharing aren't always appreciated by the groups that they're coming from. We heard that our nomenclature systems and classifications do not reflect reality and are sometimes incredibly insulting. The best example of this was a pipe that came from a Mi'kmaq community, and a knowledge keeper saw how it was classified and said, that's so insulting. I said, it's okay. I was on the nomenclature committee. I'm going to email the chair and we'll talk about this and we'll recommend an update, and it's okay. And got back, well, tell them to call it something else. That didn't go over well. So there are opportunities for us to listen better and to be more respectful and relax some of those standards that we all love and adore and help us find things, but don't work for people who don't come from within the profession. We also assumed that putting everything online was going to be great and everyone would appreciate it and they'll find it and yay us. And if a community is not engaging with the museums, they're not going to go looking for their content online because they don't think it will be there. They don't know what is in collections. So there's a big disconnect there between what we think people are able to access and what they actually are accessing. So what came out of this work is we have our Reconciliation Action Plan, which is a living online document on our website. It outlines opportunities for ANSOM as an organization. It outlines opportunities for our member museums. It reframes the collections work that we do. So it talks about inventory, but it's more the why are we doing this than deviating from any of the work that we are actually already doing. And it's our report back to members. And we do send regular updates to people who've connected with us. So it lets us show them we're a small organization. We have 4 staff for the whole province, but we will keep working on this and they will be able to see how we work on it. So now that we opened that door and we can't close it, we look to make sure everything that we do ties back to the Unlocking Collections work that we started. We do cultural awareness training. We've been answering questions that have come up. I'm supposed to stop talking now. There's a few more messages for us. Walaliak, thank you.
Thank you, Karin, for sharing your experiences, and you're doing a great job over there. Please come forward. We have room for questions and answers. If you have a question, please raise your hand and state your name and organization, please. Any questions? Saskia, here in the front. Anna-Piet, can you bring the mic?
Thank you so much, Saskia Scheltjens, Rijksmuseum. Thank you both for really interesting presentations. A big view of what everything happens, and I thought it was especially nice to then compare it to initiatives that were equally beautiful, but on a smaller scale, so thank you very much. I was wondering, Karin, if I can ask you a question, what made you change your mind and change your approach? So what was the flame that got you started? We went into the first session thinking we're going to have conversations about digitization priorities, and everyone very bluntly said, well, here's the real issue. You shouldn't be talking about this, you should be talking about this. The museum in my community is not telling my story. That's a problem. So why, you're putting the cart before the horse. And so then we had to kind of pull back and say, okay, if we're going to hear that everywhere we go, because we did these gatherings all around the province, if we're going to hear that everywhere, then how do we pull back and have those bigger conversations first?
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Hello, I'm Kathleen. I'm from the University of Leicester. My question is also for Karin. I really appreciate what you said about letting go of project deadlines and timelines, but how are you able to reconcile that with your kind of the governance and funding models in museums, which are often based around projects and targets and planning?
It's hard, I'll be honest. We did get federal funding for this initiative, and so we had to just go back to them right away and say, this is what we're hearing. Like, the models that we have set up are very Western, and they do not work within an Indigenous context. They do not work when you have to build a relationship to be able to work with somebody before you can even do anything. The funder was very flexible, which surprised us, but because there's that government priority of reconciliation and repatriation. So because we went back to them right away and said, whoa, we just got surprised, they said, okay, here's how we think we can make this work within our reality. So the product that we created for that grant was not the digitization strategy they expected. It was a reconciliation plan instead, and they were okay with that because there was so much communication. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Trilce here in the front.
Thank you both for the very interesting presentations. It's almost another side. So on the one side, Karin, you presented the museum reaching out. Giselle, you presented the communities building what's lacking perhaps in the museums. And my question to you both actually is, do you see in a future these two worlds coming together, or do you see them as part of the heritage ecosystem where we have these smaller bottom-up projects of archives that have a specific role independent from the museum, and have museums, reach out and do another role, let's say independent? Or do you ever see a moment where communities can reach out to museums and engage in these? Or I'm curious on how you see this potential coming together.
I think that there is a new ecosystem emerging, because from one side we have this super production of data, and everybody has its own museum library, and that will disappear, and there is no criteria of preservation, so there is no public memory. I think that it's a moment to think about how can we discuss new parameters for memory as a common good. So not as a private matter of some museums or some institutions or some collections. And our bet is in this direction. Our next work, for instance, we are trying to build a meta-herbarium based on different art collections from all over the world, so we will hear from us soon. But with Brazilian institutions and international institutions, in order to present a new, not just a new botanical history, but a new approach to colonialism, for instance, to extracting with, as we are working with computer vision, information of wood, crystals, metals, present not only in the picture itself, but in all the object. And I think that this confluence is the future of the institutions must be more open to crowdsourced projects and vice versa.
Thank you, Karin. Maybe very short.
Yeah, I'd say there's a meeting in the middle, and what we've heard from any community we've worked with is that it's really hard for them to reach out. Museums love to say everyone is welcome, but if there is no relationship there, then that's really hard for people to feel welcome to actually reach out. So that's something we now need to work on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we can continue this discussion during the coffee and tea break. A big round of applause for both speakers, please.